Hey everybody! How are you guys doing out there? I'm Jen. I haven't been on a Facebook Live in a while. It feels like a long time. So I'm really excited that you guys are here to join me and that I could be here with you today. Just give me a moment while we let some people pop in and leave some comments. Hopefully you guys can see and hear me out there. Well, I am playing with this feature that I don't remember us having, is the chat popping in. So let's see. Not sure if I should leave that on or off. Han is doing the moderating today. So thank you so much for being my backup today. And anything that we talk about today, the links will get popped into the chat and you guys can click on those. Or if there's questions that you have that I don't answer, then they will get answered in the chat. And if anything doesn't get answered during this live, then I will be going back in later today and I will go ahead and check the comments and see if there's anything else that still needs to be addressed. So hopefully you get everything answered. So I am one of the co-founders of Altenew, if you guys did not know that. And I'm Jen Raza, as I explained, and I do a lot of the product design here at Altenew and a lot of other things. So it's always fun when I get a chance to step away from like designing products and doing computer work and like actually get in the craft room and craft with you guys. So it's always a nice break from my other work. So I'm really happy about that. All right, so again, I'm trying to see the chat myself, and it seems like if I don't put this on, I can't see it. I feel like since I last went live, the interface changed a little bit. So just so that I can see what you guys are saying, I'm going to leave this on the sidebar, but I think that's pretty cool. So you guys can all see what everyone is saying. And I see that Tracy is joining in as well. And some of you guys did our classes and you enjoyed those. And if you guys share while we're live, you will get a chance to win a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store. So please go ahead and do that while we're live. If you share after we are no longer live, then unfortunately you'll have to wait for the next live because it won't count. And with all of our craft and chats with Jen, you guys know that like chatting is a really big part of this. So I never have the goal of finishing a whole project, a whole card or anything. And I actually think it's good every once in a while, just like keep your expectations in check. Sometimes when you're crafting, you don't get everything done that you set out to do. And you don't want to feel like a failure, like, oh, I didn't get my card done. Oh, I'm gonna have to work on that later. So definitely like just go ahead and do it for the enjoyment of it. And if you don't finish a project, not a big deal. Like I said, I don't always finish mine because we're always chatting and having fun. So hello to Vess from the Philippines and Vicky, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm seeing Hannah's there. Maybe you can tell me how I can turn the chat back on so I could see it, but it's not necessarily on the screen. But again, that might be something that I should have set up before I went live. So I can definitely get that next time. All right, so today the plan is we are going to be mostly working with some stuff from the most recent release, which was November, but I'm not going to be working with the main release products. We actually had a cozy comfort retreat last month, and those participants got their products in September, and they got to enjoy them for pretty much 2 months of exclusivity. And then we decided to release them to the public so that if people still had holiday cards they wanted to create or wintertime projects, they could have those products even if they weren't part of the class. So again, the class members got exclusivity for the 2 months, and then now we've released it. So I'm going to be using one of those stamp sets. And I'm also going to be playing with the watercolor paints. And again, as always, I don't have a plan, you guys. I just like diving in and playing with things. So we will see where it goes. And mistakes happen live, and that's reality. When I teach my workshops, if you want to see me like really well planned out and prepared and like teaching some really fun things, definitely check out any workshops that I do. But for craft and chat, oh, it's a casual vibe. So I hope you guys are here for the ride. And more of you shared. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Kim. And Tracy is taking my boutique card class. Yes. So that's part of Altenew Academy. And once you join, you do have access to those videos in class for lifetime. So you can always go back and refresh if you need to. And it's just a lot of fun. All right. So I'm also drinking some tea. My husband made me some tea before I went live, and I'm very scared of accidentally not drinking the mug and drinking my watercolor water. I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to that concept. So I'm like, where should I put each? I'll put the watercolor to the left of me and my mug to the right, so I don't accidentally drink the wrong one. All right. So with that, let's get crafting, you guys. All right. Give me a moment. We're going to pop you down, and you will get to see my work surface and my cutting and alignment mat. Okie dokies. All right, so hopefully you guys can see this. So let me show you a few of the things I have right here. One of them is a 5x7 piece of cardstock. Actually, it's watercolor paper. What am I saying? And this is our hot press watercolor paper that we just recently launched. And this is at a larger size than our A2. So let me see if I can grab you our older set. This is also great watercolor paper. Okay, so I use both, and whatever you have in your stash works great. The reason why I took the larger size is because I'm going to do like a wash for the background, and I wanted to have the chance to trim it down. So that way I don't have to worry about like painting exactly to the edges. If you want to, you can, but sometimes it's a little bit hard because you're like running off the edge of the watercolor paper. So in this instance, I'm just going to trim it down later after I'm done painting. So we do have that watercolor paper. Next up, we have our tube watercolors. Oh, I love these so much. You guys, these have just been so much fun. I'm not going to dive into all of the properties of these just because if you've been around Altenew for a minute, you've probably already seen them. We have videos, we've got lives featuring them. We have like a Q&A that Tasneem and I did. Then Lydia and I did a follow-up Q&A because after the first release of these, we still had more questions. So we definitely wanted to get all of those addressed. So please watch those Q&A videos if you're considering buying these, because I think all of your questions will be answered. I hope so. And if you have other questions, then ask. Maybe we'll make another video if needed, or we'll at least get back to you with a comment. So I prefer to use tubes over pans. We do have amazing pan sets and I use them all the time and I love it. But just personally, I feel more comfortable using tubes. And it is a preference thing. It really is up to you. And we've got some really fun colors. This is just the first set. I do have the other set with me. I don't know if I should like sneak some peeks to you guys. They're not ready to launch until early 2024. But let's see what I know what I can show you. I can show you on my palette really quickly some dried up swatches. So with watercolor paint, especially with tubes, you do want to use a palette of some sort to squeeze out onto. And then you use water on your brush and you pick up the pigment. You guys will see me do that today. And then when you're done painting, you just leave it and it'll dry. And then you can like re-energize it with some more water and use it again. So what you just saw were the colors that I was just swatch testing yesterday. And those are going to be added to this collection. Again, these first 10 are not meant to be seen as like just these 10, like, oh, it's one set. These are mix and match. These are sold individually. So you purchase the colors you like, you leave behind the ones you don't think you'll use. If you change your mind later, you can come back and get the ones you're missing. If you run out of one color and not the others, you just repurchase the one that you need to refill. So it's really great that these are all individually sold. So you have that flexibility. And then when the new set comes out, again, mix and match with the colors here in the old set. You guys get the idea. Now you see why this is craft and chat. We're 10 minutes in and I haven't crafted yet. Oh, you guys. All right. So then these are the stamps that I was telling you about that were part of the Cozy Comfort Retreat Kit. And these did launch with that kit, and our participants got them early, and then they had exclusivity for a while, and now you guys have a chance to purchase them. And I have to say, I love this set so much. And I'm not just like saying that because I designed it. I've designed a lot of sets at Alt to Do, and I don't feel the same way about all of them. This one has my heart. I just really think it's so cute. All of our bird sets I really love. And I'm not even like a bird person. Like, I don't know a lot about bird varieties. I don't go bird watching, but I just think that this is really cute. And these are so simple. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I was inspired by when I designed this. So I was born in the 80s. So this definitely wasn't my time. But I remember when I was little, I used to watch on Nick at Night. What's it called? Nick at Night? Like on Nickelodeon at night, they would show older shows. And the Partridge Family, if you guys know that show, it was on Nick at Night. So I used to watch it, just like old reruns of the Partridge Family. And in the intro, there were all these cute little, like simple little partridges that would like hop out on the screen during the song. Tell me if I'm crazy or if you guys know what I'm talking about. And when I was trying to think of what to design for the holidays, I was thinking of the 12 Days of Christmas. And of course, we have "And a Partridge in a Pear Tree." And I was just kind of making connections to the Partridge Family TV show with the opener with the simple little birds. So these are not the same style of bird, of course, but it does have a kind of like mod 60s simplicity style to it. So that's where that came from. So here's our little partridge. And some of you remember it. Yes. So it's not just me. Great. All right. You guys know what I'm talking about. Love it. Okay. So including the partridge, which of course works with a partridge in a pear tree, and you can make your own little pear tree wreath. Again, a very like minimalist style for these. The birds are really simple to stamp, even the wreath, just like really mod elements here. And then we have a cardinal, which is, you know, great for the holidays, just kind of like a symbol for the season. And then we have a dove. It's a little hard to see because it's like light gray, but we have a dove that you can stamp out as well. And you can also make this a holly wreath. So it's a great set. I love it. Tracy's singing. I love it. I don't want to embarrass myself. Yes, I am a music teacher, but for some reason, singing live on a crafting Facebook, YouTube live, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but in my head, I'm singing with you, Tracy. All right, so this is my first time using this stamp set. So I will grab my stamp conditioning eraser and I'm just going to prep it. Now, of course, this isn't my first time using the stamp set. I did use the prototype, but this is the actual like production one. So if you want to hear a little bit of the background of how these stamps are made, when we create the designs, we send them to the manufacturer and they send us back some proof files. So those are digital and we check them to make sure everything's good. And then we go ahead and get samples produced. So it's not like the mass production yet. And then we will test out those samples. Nicole's like the first line of that. So if you guys know Nicole Picadora on our team, she's the first one who gets those samples and she makes sure that everything stamps properly, that everything layers properly, that if there are coordinating stencils, everything matches perfectly. And then myself and some of the other girls on the team, like Tasneem and Lydia, Miriam, May, we and the design team get the early samples as well. And then while that's all happening and we're making our samples for the blog hop and all that other good stuff, the manufacturer is going into the mass production. And that's when they get sent to the warehouse, and then they are like organized in the warehouse, and you guys can purchase them, and then they'll go to your house. So that's kind of like the life of the stamp. So whenever I get a new stamp set, of course, I need to prep it with my stamp conditioning eraser. You can also use a like just a plain like low dust or dust-free eraser, or you can use embossing ink. So that's a good way to do it. Or you can just use it. You know, your first few stampings may not be so great looking, and then it will get better and better as you go on. So lots of options there. Okay, so yes, Vicky says so many steps are involved in creating it. It really is. And we work so many months in advance. We're kind of like 6 months ahead. So these were all designed like in the spring, you know, and we're like always thinking ahead to like, what's the next thing going to be? Right now, we're designing spring sets for like April, and then we'll work on May. And then, you know, pretty soon we'll be in summertime, but it'll be like freezing cold winter weather here. All right, now that I have this all prepped, I wanted to get my prep work done first. Let's do some painting. Now, again, I don't have any plans here. We're just winging it. I know I'm going to do some kind of wash in the background. I don't know what colors I want to use. And there's a lot of ways you could go about doing this. I am just going to tape this down onto my mat just so that it doesn't move around on me. Also, it does help with the warping. You guys know if you use a lot of water with watercolor, sometimes your paper can warp. There's a few things you can do to prevent that. One of them is taping them down. You can also wet the whole surface of the paper first before you work on it. There are other techniques that artists use to prepare their, like fine artists use to prepare their watercolor paper. So there's just a lot of options. This, I think, is easy. It just kind of keeps it in one place while I'm working. You can also do this on a board. And if you do it on a board, then you can pick it up while you're working, or you can set it aside to dry. But we're just keeping things simple here. Again, I will be trimming this down because this is 5x7. Okay, masking tape, by the way, another favorite in the craft room. These are our watercolor brushes, not the newest ones. So I've got the newest ones here, the fine brushes, but these were released maybe a couple years ago. These are the ones that are all black, and I'm going to take, let's see, the number 4 brush right now. And on this palette that I showed you before with the sneak peek is here. These are the colors that we already have. I'm just going to dip around and play with some ideas. So I'm going to just start in one corner. I know I'm going to be covering some of this up, so I'm not too worried about what the whole piece is going to look like. I'm just playing around with it. And checking up on some comments. How many of us save our packaging for gift giving? That's a really great idea. I think it's a good habit to get into, to like do some upcycling. So you're not just throwing out packaging and then buying brand new packaging for some other purpose. So I do like that idea. All right, so I've just wet the corner here, and I'm going to dip in some different colors. So I'm going to start with the Tuladine Red, and that's down here. So this was dry. The last time I used this color was probably 2 weeks ago. And then once the water hits it, it is back to life. Okay, so I'm just going to go here and add some color. I want this to be a pretty light wash with where the colors blend fairly organically. I don't want to have really harsh lines. I will be doing this in layers just because I feel like that's a little bit easier. And again, this is just a background. If I wanted this to be some kind of focal point, then there's a lot more I can do with it. But right now, I just want to put some water down and add some color, just so I have some kind of background behind my elements. So you could see here, I'm adding more water. and then I can dip in and get some more of that red. And because it's wet on wet, it's allowing the paint to flow on its own. I'm not really doing anything except for placing it down, and then it spreads on its own. And if you're ever painting and you're like, this looks weird, that's not what I wanted, let it dry, because sometimes when you let things dry, they will look different. They will have a new life. Okay, so let me just do this, add some more color. Again, I am not really worried about what this looks like because I'll be adding other things on top. I just want to keep it somewhat organic. All right, let's get into another color up here. Maybe I'll do some of the quinacridone magenta. And that's here. I don't have a lot left, so I might need to grab some more from the tube, which is fine. And when I say I'm going to cover this up, I think I might just put a panel in front. So really only the edges will be seen. But I haven't made that decision yet, but I'm kind of thinking that's where I might go with this because I'm a very clean and simple girl, so I love a lot of white space. And having a full background of color is not my typical style. So, all right, so I'm just kind of seeing where this takes me, where the colors go. You could keep playing with it. Like I said, you could let it dry and you can add more to it. You can add splatter to it, which is really fun. Maybe I'll do that. You do want it to dry a little bit before you add any splatter, just because if I add the splatter now, it just kind of gets melted back in. Not melted, but it just blends back into the background. But you can see I have some areas here that are darker, some areas that are lighter, and then I'm even keeping like this pretty light, but I might just add a little bit more of maybe even some of the red, bring back some of that red up here. Okay, so I mixed the Tuladine red and the quinacridone magenta on my brush, and I'm just bringing a little bit of both colors up into the corner just to intensify some of that. Again, I know that I'm going to lose some of this when I trim down the panel anyway, but what's great about that is I can pick my favorite part. I don't have to just trim down the center. Like if I feel like things are boring down here or here, I could just trim those parts out and use the parts I like. Okay, so I'm going to keep that just like that. Again, it's just a background. This is not a focal point. You really can't mess up a background. Okay, there's just really no wrong way to do it. The only way I would say that you could mess it up is if you use some colors that end up with like a muddy mess. So that would be colors opposite one another on the color wheel. So if I took a yellow and a purple and mixed them together, I wouldn't really get the most beautiful hue. Like it'd be a brownish, probably like a warmish brown, depending on how much of the yellow I included. Same thing if you take green and red, or if you take blue and orange. So I would say that's the only way to mess it up. But if you're using colors that are similar to one another, that are next to each other on the color wheel, then you're going to be good to go. Okay, so I'm going to let this kind of sit for a couple minutes and taking a sip of my tea. And now let me grab my stamp wheel because I do want to do some. All right, let's see. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. I've got to switch the video. It looks like it did a weird thing. Oh, because the camera unplugged. Okay. Little technical difficulties here. And hopefully we're back and you guys can see that. All right, let's see if we can see some comments that we're okay, because otherwise I will sign off and come back in. All right, gone. I'm seeing Tracy say, oh no, gone. Am I still gone or are we okay? And you're back. Ooh, nice. Thank you. Good to hear. Okay. All right, let me just pop back. Well, that gave me some time to allow my watercolor piece to dry. What I was saying is I wanted to grab my stamp wheel so that we could do some stamping. And we're going to allow this panel to dry more fully. I'm seeing Altanu saying, hang on, you guys. All right, it's a bit blurry, but it's okay. Is it still blurry? And Jen is back. Yes, I am back. I'm glad it was just the computer that fell and not me. So silver lining, you guys know that. I told you when you're live, you never know what's going to happen. So, all right, before I set aside this panel to fully dry, I am going to go back in and do some splatter because I did say I was going to show you guys that. Then we'll do our stamping. So I'm just going to wet my brush once again, and I'm going to dip into the same colors that we were using before. And then I'm just going to tap my brush. Okay, so since this is still drying, I'm getting very delicate flicks of color. So I think I might let this dry a little bit more because you could see they're kind of disappearing into the background. You can see some of them, but you get kind of like a softer look this way. Actually, it looks pretty cute. All right, I'm going to leave that. And I'm going to set this aside to dry. Now, if I was working on a board, it'd be easy to just set aside. But for now, I'm just going to carefully peel this up and set it out of the way so it can fully dry. And like I said, we're going to do our stamping and then we're going to put these together and see if we have time to make a card. If we don't finish a card, it is a-okay. No expectations to finish anything today. Still blurry. Oh no. Sorry, Karen. Why do I feel like something goes wrong every time I'm live, right? We can't have a perfect live where nothing goes wrong. It's almost impossible. Okay, I'll be setting this aside now. It looks cute. I'm liking how it is so far. And I'm pulling out the stamp wheel. And then I'm going to grab my stamp set that we already conditioned. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm still laughing. That was just totally unexpected. You're probably like, what in the world is that sound? What in the world happened? What is going on right now? All right. Come on, Jen, you can recover. We're good. If I have a giggle fest, then we're never going to get anything done. All right, let me just trim down a piece of cardstock because the one that I had kind of fell into the abyss when I dropped my computer. So I just have another piece of plain white cardstock. I'm going to trim it down. And I think I'll make a panel, like an A2 size panel that we can lay on top of some of that painting that we just did. And then I'm also going to cut a separate piece that we're going to do our stamping on right now. Okay, so here we go. 2 pieces, and I've got my sweet little birds. Now, if you are unsure of how to layer these up, because every time you have a layering set or a kind of like puzzle piece where they all fit in together type of set, you do want to just reference the layering guide so you know what it is that you're doing to create your stamps. And on the inserts, we do include the layering guide along with project inspiration. So you can see we have some like full-size card samples. You don't just need to use this for the holidays, by the way. You can use with other sentiments that you have. And what I'm going to do is show you down here. I think I'll be doing the cardinal today. I think that'd be really cute and sweet. So I'm going to follow this, but if this is too small for you, you can go online and download all of our layering guides. So if you want to print them out, if you want to view them on your phone or your tablet, if you want to zoom in on them, anything that helps you as you're creating. So you always have that option. And as I am setting this up on my stamp wheel, I do want to remind you to go ahead and share this while we're still live. So you have an opportunity to win a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store. Now, if I look over here at each of the stamps, I can match up with what I have. So down here is our first layer for the cardinal. And again, I'm not worried where I'm stamping this just because I'm going to die cut it out anyway, so it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to place this down, and I want to use a lighter red tone, and I think I just might use a pink like is recommended. I'm going to do rouge for my first layer, and then I will hop into crimson for the second layer. And then for the final layer, the details, I will use our obsidian pigment ink. So I think it's a good little color plan. So let's start with that first layer. And I have it mounted to the flip plate. And stamping it down. Now what's great is if there's any spots that I missed. Looks pretty good though. If I missed any spots, I can always go back in and stamp again if I needed to, but I'm happy with how that looks. So let me just wipe this down and we're going to go into the next color. So the next layer is the second one right here. And this will put the like face on, like it'll be the part around his beak and his wing. So if I just line this up here, okay, so there's like a little part right here that fits in perfectly, and then nestle the last part of his wing right here. And then this I'm going to stamp with the crimson. Okay. Things feel calm now that nothing's falling off the table, doesn't it? We're all relaxed. I think there's a part I missed when I was doing the stamp conditioning. So you can see there's like a little like imperfection in his wing. So I'm just going to go back over it and stamp again. And that will fix that right up. So you see it lines right back up, and now we're good. Okay, lastly is going to add the little details to his wings. It's going to add his little tail, and then we're also going to get his legs, his beak, and his eyeball. So this is a nice final layer that adds in all of those important little details. Okay, so his little leg, the outer leg fits right here. There's like a little notch, okay? So I'm going to match up that notch, match up the beak, and where his tail goes. And that's how I'm going to stamp it down, this time in obsidian. Now for time, I might just fussy cut this out because I think this is the only part that I was going to die cut because I wanted to stamp the wreath directly on our other panel. Look how cute. Ah, such a sweet little cardinal. I love him. I'm telling you, I am like smitten with this set. I think there's just so much you could do with it, and it's really cute. Thank you to the comments you guys are leaving. I appreciate them. Okay, so let's set this aside now. So now we've got two things aside. We've got our little cardinal that we stamped. We have our watercolor panel, which is feeling almost dry, which is really great. And now let's work on the last panel. So for this, I am going to trim down the sides. So what I think, because you guys, I had a lot of time when I was cleaning up my mess a few minutes ago. I had time to think about how I was going to reveal that watercolor panel. Remember, I like white space, so I do want a lot of this card to be white. So I'm going to trim off some of the sides so that you'll be able to see the watercolor panel just peeking out from the sides. If you want more watercolor or you don't want any white at all, then just forget about this step. You don't need to do it. But I want to have more white. So I'm going to just kind of trim some of that off the sides right now. I think I'll go with a little more than a 1/2 inch. Maybe I'll do 3/4 of an inch. So we have a nice thin little panel here, just like that. And now we can stamp out our wreath. So you can see here we have the little like branchy part of the wreath. So I'm probably going to stamp that in obsidian as well. And then we can add little branches, oh sorry, not branches, leaves to our holly. And I think it'll be really cute. We'll add little berries. You guys, I might just finish a card today. Who knew? Okay, so I'm placing this down. I'm not really worried about it being perfectly centered. If you want to, you can. We do have our alignment guide stencils that works perfectly with the stamp wheel if you'd like. Now, the top of this is right here. Let me show you on the acetate, actually. Right here, because that's where like the little central pear would be if you were making this a pear tree, or you can have your little berries up there. So since I'm going to do berries, I'll put the berries there, but I want to have that pretty much centered as best as I can and upright. So it's a modern wreath. You know, we're going back to the Partridge Family here of that time period, and you know, this more minimalist design style was really popular in the 60s. And then kind of going into the 70s, but then when the 70s hit, I feel like things got a little crazy. Less minimalism in the 70s. But, you know, I didn't live it. So maybe you guys who lived through that time can clarify what it was like and what designs were like. Perfect. Love that obsidian. Such a crisp result every single time. You like never need to double stamp it. It's so good. But it is because it's a pigment ink. So pigment inks do have more of that like rich color than a dye ink, because on a dye ink, you are dyeing the cardstock. So you're allowing that pigment, not pigment, that's probably the wrong word to use. You're allowing that color to sink in and dye into the paper. However, when you have a pigment ink, it more so just sits on top and you get really true colors that way. And then it takes longer to dry, but you do get like a richer look. Yes, the partially curved design. I really like that too. So we're going to add some leaves to this. And remember, we had some options for leaves. If you're making a pear tree, you can do kind of like the more traditional looking leaves, or you could just not make a pear tree or a holly bush at all. It could just be leaves. But I'm going to do the holly. So I've got this right here. And we've got 2 layers. So I'm going to match these up with the little center stems that are already there. Okay, I know you can't see this, but once I stamp it, you'll see what I mean. So through the center of each leaf is like a little vein, and that's the black part that we already stamped. And for color, let's go with some like lagoon. Let's do volcano lake for this layer and lagoon for the next layer. I love these colors so much. Okay. And for those of you who have just joined us, this set was available and still is available as part of our November 2023 release. And it was originally an exclusive from the class. Sorry, I'm like multitasking here. It was from our Cozy Comfort retreat class. So you have now the option in the public to purchase it if you did not participate in that workshop. Yes, this was the right choice doing Volcano Lake. I love it so much. Okay, we'll hop into layer 2 with our lagoon. And this stamp set is Birds of the Season. So we've got the partridge, we've got the cardinal like we stamped today, and then we have the little dove. Dove is also good for weddings, you know, not just the holidays or year round, or you don't even have to like acknowledge that it's a dove. If you just stamp it in any colors you want, any of these birds actually, you can stamp them in any colors and they could be any types of birds you want. You know, we'll use imaginations here. I do feel like the cardinal looks like distinctively a cardinal just because of this part on top. The bird people can tell me what that's called. So that definitely, I would say, makes that a cardinal. But the other two, I think you can turn into any type of bird you want. Okay. Now let's hop in with the lagoon. And now we have our little two-toned leaves. Lovely. So nice. And I'll grab our rouge and our crimson back so we can do the berries. Then we'll stamp a sentiment. Then we'll fussy cut our bird. I could use the coordinating dies, which I have, but sometimes it's faster just to fussy cut. And then we will mount to our watercolor panel. And I'm looking at the time, and I think I could do this in time. So yay, yay us. Okay, so I'll show you one of the sample cards right here. So what you can do is stamp the little holly cluster, not the berry cluster, sorry, the berry cluster right here. And just have that kind of hanging down. Or if you want to put the berries like everywhere, just stamp it multiple times. You don't have to follow what's here. It's not like a rule to follow the insert card. And if we were doing the pear tree, you can stamp the pear in the center. Again, you can put the pears everywhere. It is completely up to you. But I was going for a minimalist situation, so that's why I only had the one set of berries or the singular pear. So this is just going to go right there, and I'll use the lighter tone, which is the rouge. And some of you guys are leaving such lovely comments. I'm so glad you're enjoying this set. And if you have this set already, I would love to hear about it. And if you don't, I'd love to hear if you are interested in maybe adding it to your stash, because it is a good one that works beyond the winter holidays. Okay, so I'm going to grab that last step, which is just the other half of the 3 berries. As I do this, I realize I haven't been drinking my tea. I also haven't been drinking my watercolor water. The dirty water. So that's a win. That was one of my fears. For those of you who were with me in the beginning today, you know I was worried about drinking from the wrong glass. But I haven't been drinking from either glass. So I guess I'll have to reheat it after our live so I can finish. Oh, thank you so much. Sahara says, nice job. And it's looking so beautiful. Thank you. It really is an easy one. I will admit that some of our sets are kind of for more advanced layering stampers, like some that I wouldn't recommend to a newbie. I will double stamp this. I think I went too quickly when I was doing my stamp conditioning that I did miss a few spots. But this one I would say a beginner can handle, no problem. It's just really straightforward. And if you misstamp something, like if the leaves were like a little rotated and not completely touching the little black stems, it just would look fine as well. You don't really have to be as precise with this one as you would with maybe some of our other layering stamps or other stamps that you may have in your collection. All right, let's pick a nice little sentiment. I'm going with "'Tis the Season." And I like to stamp sentiments on a block. I feel like it's very unconventional, so I always have to explain it to people why I'm doing it. I like to do that just because I feel like I have a little more control over what it is that I'm stamping. I think I'm actually going to change it from "Our Home" to "Yours," just because I did recently do another card with the "'Tis the Season" stamp set, or the "'Tis the Season" stamp, and I want to go ahead and just give a little bit more variety. Okay, so we're going to do "From Our Home to Yours," and I'm quickly just mounting this onto the acrylic block. Again, you can absolutely do this in the stamp wheel if you prefer, but I'm going to be lining this up and stamping it down here using the Obsidian ink. And then we always hold our breaths together and hope for the best anytime a sentiment is being stamped, but especially when you're going without any help of a stamp positioner. Yes. All right, nailed it. Okay. All right, so we are in the home stretch here. Let me just put these other sentiments back. Trying to tidy up as I go along to avoid any other mishaps. Now remember, I already trimmed this panel down. Okay, so it's already narrower than an A2 card. Fussy cutting time, and it's a good chance for me to show you my Altenew scissors. So we'll definitely pop these guys into the chat so you can check out the link. And I really love them because they have a non-stick blade. They have a fine cutting tip, and they're really kind of a staple. I feel like you need scissors in a craft room. Most of you probably have lots of scissors that you use for different things, or some of you may have duplicates of certain tools that you misplace a lot. I know that happens to me sometimes. I do have a lot of scissors, and I just like having these because they're convenient. I keep them on a little like 3M hook behind me, and most of my scissors are there, so I feel like it's easy to just like reach behind me and grab, and then when I'm done, I pop them back on little hooks. And then my sewing scissors, they live somewhere else, because if you're into fabric crafts and sewing, you know that you may not use fabric scissors on paper or you completely ruin them. So I would cry if I ever mix them up. So my sewing scissors are also on 3M hooks, but they're just on the other side of the room so that we don't have any problems. Okay, so here is how our card is coming along. And I am bringing back our watercolor panel from before, which is not completely dry, but this is pretty. You guys, I love it. I'm almost sad to cover it up, honestly. Like, I know the plan all along was I was going to cover up a lot of it, but I just really like it. Oh, man. All right. I'm like having an internal struggle right now because I really want to just keep this whole panel and just make a new thing out of it. But I did say I was going to use it here. Oh, of course it does look cute. So let me trim off the parts where the tape was, obviously, but also this is still a 5x7 panel. So I do need to trim it down. And then you'll see this is the part that'll kind of pop out behind the card. And I think it's really nice. It's still going to be great, but I do like how this panel came out. And you guys saw how easy it was. Like, no problem at all. All right, I'll actually bring my trimmer up so you guys can see how much of this gets trimmed off. because an A2 panel is definitely smaller than what we've got here. So I'm just going to start by trimming off some of those little white edges. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to keep the bottom here. I'm going to trim off some of this stuff because I want more red in the design than I do of that quinacridone magenta. So I'm going to flip this over. I'm actually going to do it this way because this is my new straight edge that I just cut. And I'm going to go to 5.5 and slice that. And then I have to decide, I think I will keep this as one side, which means I'm going to be trimming off this way at 4.25. Okay, panel done. Elements done. Card is ready to assemble. It's like Avengers Assemble, but cards assemble. Karen says she wasn't expecting the outcome. You always have to wait for it to dry. I am telling you, I used to talk a lot about the ugly phase. I haven't really said that recently because I don't want anyone to think that anything they create is ugly and feel bad about it. But I used to say that like before it was dry, like you're in the ugly phase because things are wet, things don't look even, like it's kind of a mess. Now, sometimes when it dries, it's still in the ugly phase, you know, and then you could just kind of try to fix it up. Once it's dry, add more layers, do what you got to do. But I do love how this panel came out. And I think this is going to be like a really sweet holiday card. All right, I've got my scissors out so I can trim off some of my instant dimension foam tape. I'm just going to take some big pieces here because I'm placing a big panel down. Now, again, I always make, I'm saying again because I explain this every time I teach. So if you're tired of hearing it, I'm so sorry. But I always create card panels instead of full card, like folded cards, because I find it easier to store them when they're not doubled up. So again, it is like I usually put them on 110-pound cardstock. So the card bases are pretty thick on their own. And then you add all the stuff and then the foam and the dimension and everything. So it's just a lot to store. So it's easier to store just the panels. And then if I'm taking photographs of my card, it is so much easier to photograph a panel because it's not popping up at you every 2 seconds. So it's just nice and flat. So I love that. And it's easier to create on a flat panel and stamp on a flat panel than it is to stamp on a card. On a folded card, that is. Now, if you're doing a one layer, then of course you're going to be stamping directly onto the card base, which is fine if that's what you're doing, is creating a one layer card. I'm going to take the tape release paper off in the center first. I'm going to try to line this up. I can also use my alignment mat here because this is A2 right here, this guide. So I'm going to place that there and center up this panel. Looks great. Popping down the adhesive in the middle. And now I can kind of sneak in and get the release paper that is all around it. Then we're gonna adhere our little birdie and we have a cute card that's all finished. If you weren't chatting excessively like I was, and if you weren't dropping things like your computer, I would say you could probably get this whole thing done in maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, depending on how fast you work and of course how wet your watercolor panel is. Mine's pretty much dry now. It's nice and flat too. I had 0 warpage of this, so it was really nice. I love this 5x7 watercolor paper. It's fantastic. And I'm going to grab a little bit more of that foam tape just to put on our cardinal. I'm going to give you guys about a 2-minute heads up right now that I am about to sign off. So if you did want to keep yourself in the running for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store, please share this video in the next 2 minutes while we are still live, and we will contact you if you win. And if you don't share while we're live and you do it after the fact, unfortunately, it won't count. So please do it now if you didn't yet and if you'd like to. All right, so I have a little skinny piece here for his tail. and pop this little piece on. I think that should be good. So the other I have here, I'm just going to pop it back onto that big roll. The big roll of never-ending tape. And we are just about done. If you want to add more to this, because I know this is a clean and simple card and it's not everybody's preferred style. If you wanted to add more, you can add sequins, you can add enamel dots. We have so many enamel dots, you guys, and more color families to come. We are working on having dots for every color family that we have. So that way you can coordinate your inks to all of your enamel dots. And we've got more things coming. I don't know what to say. All right. If you like sparkly stuff, you're going to like some of the embellishments that we're coming out with soon. So I don't want to tell you too much. But look at this. This is so much better in some, not better, but like different and unexpected than having just plain red cardstock. Okay. So I have the watercolor panel. I did not have to go through the effort of doing that whole panel when I'm just using the little side strips, but I wanted to show you guys options, especially if you wanted to use the full back panel on your project and show the whole thing off. So that's why we painted it. It was so easy. You know, you don't really have to think much about it and you get a really cool look. And again, this is the Birds of the Season stamp set. And we have such cute little sentiments. And now we're all going to be singing the theme to the Partridge Family when we sign off. Those of you who are in the know. All right, let me switch back to the front camera. And I'll do a proper goodbye. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you can see my wigs and my Loki headpiece. It's normal craft room stuff, you know? All right. So, oh my gosh, it is so dark out. I live in the Northeast in the Boston area. And since we had daylight savings, I was hoping we'd see more daylight, but it just seems like it's super dark. So it was dark this morning too. It's just the time of the year for that. So I am going to be signing off, and I want to thank everybody for being with me through all the chatter. You know, we chat a lot, but we finished a card. Look at that. So I'm very proud of it, and I'm excited to send it to somebody. And it was really simple to make. And if you guys have similar stamp sets, or if you want to get the Birds of the Season stamp set, please go ahead and check out the link. I did add in the description of this video the link to the November collection, and it's in there. And I believe we also have the direct link to the products in the chat, so you can also go to the chat. All right, that'll just about do it for me. Thank you for joining me on today's wild ride, and I will talk to you all soon. I hope you have an amazing and crafty day. Bye.